The colored child should be taught Negro history, that she may be proud of her dark skin. This is a quote from the book The Colored Girl Beautiful. And when I first read these words when I was in graduate school, they felt new. They felt like something I wanted to believe was true, but wasn't really sure existed out in the real world. If by chance you are not a Black person, you may not be quite as familiar with the nuances of color among Black people. And I would say it's generally pretty common among Black families to discuss skin color, and my family was no different. Your particular shade of brown, categorized generally by light skin or dark skin, is always noted. So this is me as a kid. And as you can see, I've always been about this shade of brown. And I would say very firmly in the dark skin category. And while my mother told me regularly that I was pretty, she also cautioned me heavily against getting any darker. This is me after my first and only trip to the beach as a kid, where I got my first and only sunburn. Side note, that is not just wet hair, it is jerry curled hair. Thank you, early 90s. And normally on occasions like this, where I would be out in the sun all day long, my mother would make sure that I was slathering on sunscreen to prevent tanning. Now, I wasn't with my family on this particular trip, so I either skipped the sunscreen, I hated it because it made me look ashy, or I stayed out in the sun too long and just exceeded its usefulness. Either way, I snagged a nice little tan for this picture. But it was made quite clear to me that I should be putting considerable effort into not getting darker. Darker was bad. Eventually, I started to carry that around with me, this idea that I should be ashamed of my dark skin. And throughout middle and high school, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't the blackest thing walking, and in my mind, there wasn't anything worse that I could be. I hid my tan lines when I got them. I compared myself constantly to my friends who were lighter than me, and I just assumed that I wasn't attractive because I was dark-skinned. I was just ashamed to be myself. By the time I hit college, though, it had become exhausting and miserable, and I decided that I was tired of being ashamed. I started actively working to appreciate all aspects of myself, including my skin color. And I wish I could say that it happened all at once, like it does in the movies where there's a girl and she's sad and she doesn't believe in herself, and then all of a sudden something profound happens to her, and the next scene she's basically turned into Beyonce, stomping down the homecoming runway dressed as a queen. I wish it had happened to me like that, but it didn't. It happened slowly over the course of several years, generally my college career and a little bit after. But I started to think of myself differently. So I started to seek out women who looked like me and who were darker than me that I genuinely felt were beautiful. I embraced the Black girl magic trends that were just becoming prominent around that time, and I celebrated my melanin with the rest of Black America. And I reminded myself to be grateful for the incredible 8 years that my first lady was the gorgeous Michelle LaVaughn Obama. Fast forward to grad school, and I'm in a design class with a friend of mine who's just presented on a project about the pressures of women to be and present in a certain way. And when I asked her about her work after class, she told me that she'd use this book, The Colored Girl Beautiful, as a reference. Now, this was around 2016, and I never heard of this book before, so I went home, I looked it up, and in the first few pages, I found that quote about being proud of your dark skin. This book was written by a woman named Madam Amazilia Hackley in 1916, and it was a collection of speeches that she gave, primarily to young Black women in the Jim Crow South. She wanted them to know that they were beautiful and brilliant and the pride of the Black race. Now, imagine my surprise. I've been on this lifelong journey of self-acceptance and have finally come out on the other side, loving myself more, and I come across these beautiful words, written lovingly on a page over 100 years ago. Words that could have helped make my journey easier, that I would have loved to hear at 12 or 16 or 19. And at this point, I wanted to know everything about the book. I tore through the pages looking for more of this sort of encouragement. And I found it. Throughout the book, I found messages telling Black women to be unafraid and to have faith in themselves and to take control over our own lives. And these would have been empowering encouragements in 1916, but they resonate with me now. And as I read, I thought, this is it. This is the book that every little Black girl should read growing up. So I read on, and I expected 200 pages of affirmations just like these. And I found plenty that were significant, but that wasn't all I found. Among all of the encouragements for Black women, I also found phrases that did not sit well with me. I found suggestions that we try not to be noticed unless others notice how quiet we are. And I thought, what the hell is that all about? Why is my quietness the only thing that's allowed to take up space in a room? And as much as I love Madam Hackley's encouragement for Black women, I struggled with the limitations that she placed on us. She said that we should both love ourselves and make ourselves small, and be proud of our limitless potential, but not too ambitious. I was reminded of my own struggle with self-acceptance and having been told that I was pretty, but too dark to ever be beautiful. Why were we doing this to each other back then? How is it still happening to me now? I want to know how we break free of this cycle. I found myself scribbling questions like this frantically in the margins of my copy of the book, asking them to no one in particular, kind of like a crazy person. And I wanted and needed a way to process them. I found myself wondering if other Black women had these questions, so I decided to talk to a few.
I don't know why those stats come out so much and so often in the articles, like in Essence and stuff, about like the plight of the Black woman and like we're doomed. We're educated but alone.
Being loved feels like completion.
I don't think I'm ugly, but I don't know if I always feel beautiful.
There are times when I'm just not pleased. And you may be the one who did not please me.
Even though we are diverse and we're not a monolith, at the same time, there is this ancestral historical connection.
I felt a slight pang of, I didn't pursue anything that my people need.
Those thoughts led me to the idea for this podcast, The Colored Girl Beautiful. And in each episode, I talk with Black women about one of the topics from the book. I want to know how other Black women are managing these competing messages that have been passed down to us about love and ambition and racial responsibility and family obligation and friendship and all the other things that Madam Hackley talks about in her book. I want to hear and share stories of Black women being vulnerable and honest about their struggles and successes in navigating Black womanhood today. At the end of the foreword of The Colored Girl Beautiful, Madam Hackley says, "I send these thoughts to the daughters of other colored women, hoping that among them there's some new thought worthy of a racial amen." And this is my way of doing just that, adding my own new thoughts, as Madam Hackley puts it. I don't know what I'll find, but I hope you'll listen along and we'll figure it out together. Thank you.